I'm extremely confident of achieving full autonomy and releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
Autonomous cars are quickly becoming a reality. After Tesla released a limited beta version, it has shown remarkable abilities to navigate through not just highways, but city streets and unmarked residential streets as well. But what would this mean for the average person? Would most people actually use the autonomous capabilities, or would they prefer to drive instead? What if you could take your eyes away from the road and let the car handle the driving? What would you do sitting there with all that free time on your hands? This and much more is what's coming up next, but first let's get plugged in. Hello and welcome back to another episode here on EV Source. My name is Harry and I'm your host for today's dose of EVs and technology. Before we begin, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing so you don't miss our future videos. A few days ago, Elon was on a multimedia award show with Axel Springer, where the discussions ranged from Neuralink to SpaceX. Tesla, of course, was not left out from the conversations, and there were a lot of interesting points that were made throughout the show. So without further ado, let's jump right in.
A couple of years ago, we saw each other in America, and a guy asks you on a panel when autonomous driving will be approved, and you said, I do not care so much when it's going to be approved, I care more when human beings in cars will be forbidden. And then the guy said, well, that's really unrealistic, it's never going to happen in cars, people want to do something actively. And then you said, well, 100 years ago nobody could imagine elevator without a lift boy. Today nobody could imagine a lift with a lift boy.
Yeah.
So when is autonomous driving really going to happen, and when are you able to do it, and when is it going to be approved?
Okay, just between us.
Yeah, it's a very discreet circle here. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'm not against people driving, to be clear. So I think people will drive cars basically as far into the future as I can imagine. It's just that it's going to be increasingly unusual to drive your own car. And while it's fun to drive a well-handling car on a winding road in beautiful terrain, of course that's fun. But it's not fun to drive a car in terrible gridlock traffic.
I have to say that I do agree with Elon and the points made by Axel. While it is true that some of us do actually enjoy driving, nobody really enjoys it very much when stuck in traffic. You don't have to be a car enthusiast to enjoy driving. In fact, I know many people who have said they enjoy driving but aren't that much into cars. Let's make an analogy here. Let's say it takes you 45 minutes to get to work in the morning and another 45 minutes to get back home in the evening. That's 1.5 hours per day. Both times you're stuck in traffic, at least some parts of the way. Have you not ever thought about doing something else in that 1.5 hours than just staring at the road and driving? But just imagine for a second, if your car could drive you from your driveway all the way to your workplace safely without any intervention, would you still choose to drive yourself, or would you rather perhaps do what most of you, I'm sure, are thinking right now? Sleep, pressing the snooze button a few times until you have just enough time to get up, brush your teeth, change clothes, and drive away. If this sounds all too familiar to you, the chances are that you would probably use the time in the car sleeping.
I think people are unlikely to, most of the time, want to commute or with their and drive themselves. And people are typically spending hour and a half a day, maybe 2 hours on average driving, especially say like California or something like that. It's very common. And some people will actually commute like 3 hours a day sometimes. It's pretty crazy.
Wow, that's insane. The most I have driven to work and back is close to 2 hours, but 3 hours really takes the cake here. Can you imagine what you could do in those 3 hours if you could just let go of the wheel and take your eyes away from the road? I could think of a few things to keep myself busy and active with, but I'm curious to know how much time you spend driving each day. Is it an hour, 2 hours, maybe over 3 hours? Let me know in the comments below.
If you say fast forward to like 10 years from now, I think 10 years from now, almost all cars will have full autonomy capability. all new cars produced.
10 years sounds about right, which is what I've been saying as well. Let's fast forward to 2030. If you are an automaker and you're still producing ICE cars in 2030, something is really wrong with your management and you've completely missed the boat. Jumping back to 2020, if you're not taking electric vehicles seriously, you are doomed. Those that are now starting to get into the EV market still might have a chance to be successful, though they're really behind in terms of technology, batteries, range, software, price, and I could go on and on, but you get the point. Tesla is leading in every sector and no one still comes anywhere close to what Tesla is doing today. But is Tesla going to stop innovating? Of course not. Tesla's rate of innovation is unmatched and they continue to grow their lead. Like I've said before, and I'm going to say this again, the ones that are really in big trouble are the big giant legacy automakers that had a good thing going for them for several decades, but won't be in business beyond 2030 if they don't start catching up with Tesla. Big giants move slow, as you know, and that could be their downfall that ultimately leads to their extinction.
So there's about 2 billion cars and trucks in the existing fleet, and the new vehicle production is about 5% of the fleet size, so about 100 million. So even to the point at which all cars are autonomous, it'll still take 20 years to replace all the cars, assuming that the number of cars and trucks in the fleet stays constant. But like say 10 years from now, I would say vast majority of cars electric, like maybe 70-80% or more, and almost all cars autonomous. Electric autonomy is absolutely the future, no question. It's just a question of when. But then, like I said, sometimes people think that means the global fleet gets replaced instantly. And it's like, nope, you have to go 20 years beyond that point before, 20 years from the point at which new cars are electric, then the fleet will be replaced.
This is a great point by Elon, one that I admit I failed to explain in some of my previous videos. I've said the transition from ICE to electric will happen much sooner than people realize, and even went as far as using early 1900s as an example when we went from horses and wagons to cars in roughly 10 years. But of course, it took an additional 10 to 15 years before there were no horses at all, just cars. So the first 10 years is what it took to have more cars on the road than horses. And this is what we can expect to happen within this decade. But because the population of Earth in 1900 was only 1.6 billion compared to what it is today, which is almost 7.8 billion, with about 2 billion vehicles on the road today, it will take longer to transition from our old gas guzzlers to electric. As Elon said, from the moment when all vehicles produced are electric, it will take roughly 20 years to replace 2 billion vehicles with electric vehicles. That's assuming the number of vehicles stays the same, which it's not. It's actually growing. And by the time all vehicles produced are electric, the number of vehicles on the road globally most likely will be more than it is today, and will perhaps continue to grow in the years ahead. So when would all vehicles in the world be electric? My guess is no earlier than 2050.
Anyway, to actually answer your question, I'm extremely confident of achieving full autonomy and releasing it to the Tesla customer base next year.
Next year? That's 2021 and it's just around the corner. I think Elon is being very optimistic with his prediction about level 5 autonomy. In fact, I'd even argue that Tesla will probably reach level 4 next year. While they've made great leaps and bounds in the last few months and now having a public beta in operation, I personally think the system is still at least 3 to 5 years from achieving the full level 5 autonomy. But if they get to full level 5 autonomy sooner, I'm more than happy to admit being wrong. I'd rather see level 5 autonomy happen sooner than later. So when Elon says they can make it happen next year, all the power to them, and I really hope they do reach their goal.
Now, there's a uncertain period of time for when regulatory approval will take. How long will it take? But I think if you are able to accumulate billions of kilometers of autonomous driving, then it's difficult to argue and look at the accident rate when the car is autonomous versus non-autonomous. And in fact, our statistics already show a massive difference when the car is on autopilot or not on autopilot. The safety is much greater even with the current autopilot software.
And we are discussing level 5 autonomy, so really
yes.
Full autonomy. Will
yes.
Europe lag behind, or will it be approved here at the same time like in America or China?
It's hard to say exactly when it will be approved. I mean, just and our customers already know this, but the EU regulators are the most conservative, and I don't know if people want that to be the case or not. Our customers are sort of unhappy about it, but yeah, they only meet every 6 months. It's
well,
a bit
very
of an
encouraging.
arduous.
Yeah.
Maybe meet more often. I don't know. Yeah, but I think at least some jurisdictions will allow full self-driving next year.
Okay, let's assume for a second that Tesla achieves full level 5 autonomy next year. The only thing stopping them from making it available to all Teslas across the world is regulatory approval. And we all know how bureaucracy works. It can take a long time. But not all parts of the world work the same way, so there's a good chance that we might see level 5 autonomous Teslas roaming the streets in some parts of the world. If you don't have to keep your eyes on the road and you can let the AI take over all the driving tasks, you're left with a lot of free time on your hands. So aside from sleeping, there's so much more you could do when sitting in the car. With internet connectivity, you could keep yourself busy with entertainment, playing video games, or simply by being productive and get some work done. The possibilities are almost endless. This will also bring in more revenue for Tesla as they partner up with other companies like Netflix, Disney, and Prime Video to name just a few. Since I mostly work from home now, I personally would probably use my time to be a little more productive and occasionally watch movies and shows. But what would you do if you had an autonomous car and the time to spare while being driven to your destination? Let me know down below in the comments. Once again, we are at the end of the video, and if you're still here, you are amazing. If you own a Tesla, get 10% off on your accessories when shopping at Abstract Ocean with the code EVSource. Also, don't forget to check out our merch store for shirts, hoodies, and more. And if you would like to show more support for the channel, consider becoming a patron and get access to exclusive content such as Q&As and behind the scenes. But in the end, the best form of support is having you watch and enjoy these videos. And of course, a shout out to our patrons you see on the screen, and a special shout out to our power producer Inku Kang. Thanks for watching. My name's Harry and this is EVSource. Keep charging ahead and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe and take care.